welcome Bob Matthews to the Usher Group Podcast. General Manager of Baxta, just a really special story to tell. Was really looking forward to having you on today, mate, because not only are you a great human, but you've left such an imprint on this industry and you'll continue to, but we've definitely got a bit of a story to tell with Baxta today, don't we?
Yes, Michael, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of the Baxta Journey with you.
Yeah, all good, mate. So I guess probably where I wanted to kick off, Bob, with having you on today is talk about, maybe let's talk about your piece in the industry. Like, you've been an iconic figure in the industry and someone who I know a lot of people go to for advice, solving problems, putting Baxta aside, but let's talk us through who Bob Matthews is first.
Yeah, I've been in the paint and rend industry for 35 years. I had 17 years with Wattle, 10 years with Rockcoat, and 10 years with Baxta, my last 10 years being with Baxta. My 17 years with Wattle, I was fortunate enough to have some fantastic mentors during that period who steered me into the beliefs where it's one thing to understand paint, but you really need to have the integrity, the honesty, and gain the trust of those people that you're working with. And if you're a good listener, then that's when you'll do your learning. I was also part of the acquisition when Wattle inherited Grenosite, and the first thing we did was to put off a lot of the Grenosite reps because we had paint reps, and we said we don't need render reps, we've got paint reps who can do that job. But we soon found out that paint and render are two different commodities, and when they come together you need specialists in that market to understand the way the products performed. So
bit of a tough lesson there, was it? So you pushed them out the door and realised that you needed their expertise.
Yes.
Yep.
And it was also the Grenosite people who had great relationships with the architects at the time. And then I was fortunate enough to have 10 years at Rockcoat, and that's where I learned about render and Bob Cameron. And Bob's approach to life was very much about the environment and sustainability and the way render works. So they had great products, they had great reps, but they were render people, not paint people. And when you go to a build today, it's those two things that come together. So that's the fortunate part of my journey along there, was having a great understanding how you have render and you have paints and textures coming together to sustain the life of the building.
Wow, yeah. So it's a lot, some very long tenures between the different opportunities you had there, and like you said, getting the opportunity to learn both the front end and as you know, the systems they need to work together. And I think that's sometimes where we find those challenges, especially from an Usher point of view. We're being the ones that are applying on site, and you've got to make sure that those systems actually work together. Otherwise, you're the one that's at the end of the day applying the product and putting the system together, and if those things don't talk to each other and they're not fit for purpose, then that's what creates problems, and people keep coming back. So let's maybe transition then. So that's been your journey in the industry, and obviously there's so much more in depth that's happened along that way, but let's talk about the birth of Baxta and how did that originate, and what is, if you were going to introduce Baxta, how would you do that?
The intention of Baxta was never to make a lot of money. The intention of Baxta was basically to try and break some monopolies and bring some competition back into the market. As I said, we were never going to make a lot of money. We're a third-party manufacturer, and that basically dictates that you're competing against the people that are supplying your product into that market. So your margins were never going to be great, but if you have the answers to their problems, and if you have the integrity to want to work with the builders, the architects, the developers and the specifiers, then money doesn't become such an issue. It's about whether you can add value to their business, and if you can come up with systems that will sustain the life of their building.
Yeah, well. So how did Baxta come together? Who was involved in that process, and how did it kickstart?
Baxta was started by Theo Veritaris. When Theo started Baxta, he was looking for somebody to take over and run that business. At that time, I was employed by Rockcoat. My 10 years was up and I was going to retire at the end of that 10 years. Theo approached me and asked whether I would like to work and manage the Baxta business, which I considered an honour to be able to particularly work with Theo. I mean, Theo is an icon of the industry, and through his contracting business has made significant changes. So I thought with Theo's guidance, understanding, and my willingness to want to probably make a greater difference into the market, that I would accept that challenge. And that's what I did.
Such a cool story. And I hear a lot about you guys trying to break a monopoly. You know, like a lot of that, yes, Baxter's there to solve problems and to fix things, but also to try and break existing monopolies within the industry. So what's your viewpoint on that? And you know, I know there's probably certain things we should or shouldn't say on camera, but it's, you know, what does it look like to actually come into a market where there is, you know, a monopoly of suppliers and, you know, yeah.
Well, really, there was, when I joined Baxter, there was probably one outstanding supplier into the market in both paint and render, and that was Dulux. And Dulux found their way to being the market leader simply through, there was probably about a 10-year period where Wattle and Taubmans were bought and sold a number of times, and as a consequence of that, I think it's fair to say that they lost their way.
Yes, yep.
And pretty much handed Dulux market share on a plate.
Yep.
And of course, Dulux in Bunnings, that helped build their monopoly that they were growing, and architects. You know, I've sat in front of a lot of architects, and I might be guessing this, but I would say that 80% of the specifications that end up in front of an architect are a Dulux specification. I can also say that once you get in front of an architect and have an opportunity to show them other systems and other values and other benefits, that most architects are open to change.
Open to change, yeah. We've experienced that from an applicator's point of view at Usher as well, and we obviously get through hundreds of tenders to price every year, and I would agree with you. I think probably 80%, even potentially more, like it almost feels like the default. Every single project seems to be specified Dulux, and you know that's great. And like you said, they've done an amazing job, and they've been the leader in that field. But it's also about challenging that, creating healthy competition, but also looking at what's the best outcome for the project. You know, what's, aside from what's just being defaulted to, it's, you know, what's actually going to give the best outcome for the client for what they want to achieve, both in the short term and also in the long term, you know, for their assets. And I just love seeing what Baxter's been able to do in this last sort of 10 plus years. And it's just, you know, we can talk about some of that growth and milestones and projects. Like, it's just been amazing to watch. But probably before we dive into that, help us understand Baxter as a business, how it's structured, from third-party manufacturing, but also, you know, products, systems. Like, do you guys cater for everything, or do you have a narrow focus on what you try and deliver?
Look, we've never made a secret that we're a third-party manufacturer. When I've sat in front of architects in particular, I've always shared the fact that our wet products or our paint has been made by Wattle. Our dry products, renders, have been made by Rockcoat. And we then work with our chosen suppliers to identify the best performing products that brought the products together as systems. Products that were not necessarily manufactured by the same company, but products that perform best for those manufacturers, were sustainably acceptable, environmentally friendly to the applicator along with the owner of the building.
Wow. And I think that's where I've seen you guys really excel, is that you really do consider all parties involved, and you have such a focus on developing that culture or those relationships and looking after the people on operating with integrity. Some of those values you talked about, learning through years of experience and, you know, working through Wattle and different mentors in the industry. But that for me was like really the cornerstone of Baxter, is that you guys operated with integrity and you tried to make sure that everyone that was involved in that process, whether it was, you know, the developer, the architect, the builder, or the applicator, everyone understood what was required, but also there was no like favoritism. It was about what is actually happening here with this product out on the site and what is going to give the best outcome. And sometimes that meant that us as the applicator, it was going back and realizing that maybe we had missed a step in our process and we needed to go back and redo it. There wasn't like trying to cover or give favoritism to anyone. It was about the truth and about operating with integrity to make sure that you're giving the customer the right outcome. So really, really cool to see. And I think that's, from an outside perspective looking in, I can see that's why Baxta was so successful and why it has done in excess of 500 projects, because it became such a referral-based system where you'd built up credibility. You deliver some milestones and big key projects and you do them really well and you operate with integrity. So then that leads to the next one. And it just started to really there was a period there where there was, some really major projects all on at the same time. So talk about what happened when Baxta really tipped into that growth phase, and, maybe talk about a few key projects or any challenges that came with that growth. Because obviously as soon as you start growing, it puts pressure on the system, right?
I was very fortunate, Michael. The first building company to give us an opportunity was Hutchinson Builders. And the design manager at the time, I sat with him and he explained to me that they were having problems, long-term problems, with rust spotting on sophites and rusting on their door jambs.
And this is particularly the coastal sort of projects, wasn't it?
This is along the coastal projects.
Yes, yep.
And they found themselves going back and having to rectify this rust spotting, even though in most cases the build was outside of the builder's warranty period. Hutchinson Builders, being the company they are, was still going back and fixing that. So we were able to develop a system that overcame that problem, and that system is now used along the coastal strip. They also wanted to have a look at our warranty. That was their other question. What they wanted was a warranty that they could understand without having to engage a legal team to decipher what that warranty meant.
Which is a big key point too, because there are a lot of warranties that, they're overcomplicated, the client can't understand them, there's a lot of avenues to get out of it. So they wanted something simple, right?
Yeah, that's right. They wanted a warranty that they could understand, but a warranty that not only protected the manufacturer, but also protected the builder and the owner of the property. Most warranties that you'll find from manufacturers these days are simply based around protecting themselves. The Baxta warranty is the same approach as Baxta. Baxta isn't about itself. Baxta's about the other people and solving their problems and working towards making the industry a better place.
And from what my understanding is that system now is actually in the Hutchies quality handbook. So like any projects that they do along the coastline, now that's, whether it is Baxta approved or someone else, it's a system that they now have for putting down, the whole, from woe to go, the epoxy primer, right the way through to whatever system goes on there. That's now their minimum standard that they have to protect themselves and the asset, for the client. And that's a huge change to the industry. And we've seen that now roll out beyond Hutchies into, other builders or developer builders, and they're seeing the success that that's having. And they're going, well, maybe we need to pay attention and we need to start allowing for this within our cost planning as well.
Yes, you're right. The other builders have now adopted that system as well, whether it be a Baxta system or an alternate manufacturer's system, but that's pretty common now along the coastal strip, and in fact from the ocean to about 3 kilometres inland. And when I talk about Hutchies and that project that we worked on with them, which is an iconic for the Gold Coast, which is 227 Hedges Avenue.
Beautiful project.
And you find the 227 Hedges Avenue in just about all architect publications now, particularly the interior. When you walk in through there, in through the foyer area, it's a spectacular build. But we also did other iconic projects such as Sky Tower, which at the time was Australia's largest, tallest building. We also supplied the product into Pacific Fair when they did their rebuild, and we supplied the Gold Coast Casino. So there's been some great projects in amongst those 500 that we've done.
Yeah, we're not talking about just your average project. These are industry-leading, iconic, the largest projects of their time. And I think that Star Casino is a cool story too, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but that the existing, like we've done every part of both the existing casino and then every new tower that's been built around it, the residential, the hotel, from an Usher application point of view. But I think Baxter's been on that journey with us for each part as well. But the casino on its own, that was a cool story in that it was originally unpainted, unfinished outside. It was aggregate stone and it had never been painted from the time it was built. And so the first project we took on there in conjunction with Baxter was repainting the entire casino and painting over aggregate stone, never been painted before, and going up against, that wasn't an easy, just walk in the door for Baxter, was it? You guys had to really put your products on the line.
Once again, it was a casino who contacted Baxter and said, we're having this problem, we're struggling to find a system that somebody would warrant to go over this substrate. And we were able to come up with a system, and we were able to give them a 10-year warranty on it, which changed the complete look of the casino. And you tend to forget about the little wins that you have along the way with some of these leading.
Well, when you get 500 plus, it's easy to sometimes lose track, and you always focus on what's in front of you. So, yep, completely understand that.
Yeah, and you mentioned, have there been any challenges along the way? Early in our tenure, once we started to grow some momentum, then we had our competitors coming along and suggesting that Baxter was just a backyard company, that they were manufacturing their product in a tin shed out the back, had no credibility, and their product was never going to last. So when I look back 10 years after they started making those statements, it's fantastic to see that we're able to prove them wrong.
I think for me anyways, and really what I wanted to try and dive into and share today as well, like a big part of it was focusing on the actual real impact that Baxter's had on the industry and I guess that legacy that it is leaving behind with this next chapter. But run us through what you think some of the biggest impacts were that Baxter's had to date.
Michael, you don't need to be the biggest to make a difference. You just need to be brave enough to change the conventional, and the biggest will follow. We leave behind significant changes introduced into the commercial market, or that Baxter have introduced into the commercial market. Systems that can be applied over multiple substrates, systems that work even in the toughest of environmental conditions, warranties for every system we specify. Not we can provide a system, but cannot give you a warranty. Exterior systems against rust spotting, that is now common for coastal builds. Interior systems where you don't need to change products from kitchen, bathroom to living areas to guard against mould. A comprehensive, user-friendly manual covering all substrates and finishes. First company to come up with a warranted system over lead-containing paints at Hurston Quarter. And I notice now that our competitors have also developed a system to take to market.
And that was a huge challenge at the time. That was another big iconic project at Hurston Quarter. These heritage buildings that have been there since, I can't remember what the date was now, I'd have to look back at it, but the paint systems were failing, like flaking off the walls, coming off. It was just one of those jobs we think, here's a real big challenge for Usher as an applicator. But the biggest thing that we were faced with was how are we actually going to do this, and what are we going to put on the walls, and what system can we do? Because the actual specification, I guess the process that we were given, the methodology, was to actually chemically strip back every single wall back to a bare substrate to try and get rid of all lead-contained paint. And that alone, it just made the project not feasible. And so partnering up with yourself and Baxter was looking at, well, how do we actually come up with a system where we can provide a good outcome that's warrantable, that's also, making sure that anything that's lead containing is not exposed and not going to be of any danger to anyone who does become the new inhibitors of that place. But how did you go about actually looking at that? Because that was probably high risk scenario as well for Baxter to put your name on the line and do that. But how did you come up with that system?
Once again, we worked technical department to come up with a product that first of all needed to bind back the flaky lead-containing paint that was there. Mm-hmm. And I recall the applicator who applied the Baxter product at the time and said, "I've never seen a product seal and bring flaky paint together such as what we've been using here." Oh, wow. And once again, you have memorable times during your journey where people say things that you think just so good to hear. Yep. People gain confidence in that.
Really making a difference.
I remember that guy was a painter, and he went on to be now a CA with the Usher Group. Mm-hmm. And once again, a great believer in the Baxter products.
So cool. Yeah. And is there anything else on there, sort of legacy impact wise, that you think, there's such a big story to tell there, but
well, and there's some products out of the normal, like we introduced a water-based densifier which goes into car parks, and people used to look at that product, or they still look at that product, and it looks like water, but are amazed at the fact that this particular product has the ability to penetrate into the concrete, goes down between 5 and 10 mil, depending on the number of coats you put on there. We're able to give a 10-year warranty with it, and people couldn't believe that because they couldn't see anything, that the product actually worked. And what it does is stop the dust, which is common in underground car parks in particular, with cars driving over it. So it now eliminates that problem that they were faced with in the car park. So wow. It's just one of the many stories of Baxter and the systems that we've developed that are now leading systems that our competitors have duplicated.
Yep, that's amazing. And, it's been so cool to be on that journey with you guys as well from an applicator's point of view, because they've been some of our major frustrations. And I know that was a big purpose of Theodore wanting to birth Baxter as an organisation, because he was frustrated as a business owner in the application space where we're boxed into a corner to try and complete a project, apply systems and get an outcome, and we were limited by what was available to us at that time. So he really saw an opportunity to try and start finding good people to solve those problems. Been amazing to talk about some of that growth journey and challenges and legacy impact. I think, if we're going to try and bring this thing into land, obviously there'd be a lot of different parties and people involved that you may have gratitude or thanks for that have been part of this journey. But if you were to, run through, I guess, those key players, is there any in particular that you think have just been instrumental in the success of Baxter and worth a mention?
Yes, Michael. As touched on earlier, Baxter's a third-party manufacturer, and Rockcoat, who manufactured our dry products, they've been there since day one, and I'd like to thank them for having the confidence, vision and support over that 10-year journey. Mm-hmm. The other is Wattle. Certainly over the last 5 years, they've played a significant part in supporting Baxter, not only their technical team, but also their senior management have seen the value and the benefits and the learnings that a company like Baxter can supply to companies such as Wattle. So they have been major contributors to the Baxter story, along with a significant number of people who have probably played minor parts in the Baxter journey. Mm. And as I mentioned earlier, Baxter's basically been a one-man operation, but there have been a lineup of people who have been willing to support and wanted Baxter to succeed. They wanted Baxter to succeed because they also recognise that the industry needs a Baxter to disrupt things and force the major players into making those changes. Yeah. The paint industry is very interesting because, as I said, it's a monopoly. There's very few players in there, and people don't really have an understanding of just how big a monopoly it is. Most people would have some understanding of what the cost of a loaf of bread is, but very few people would have any understanding of what the cost of a can of paint is until they go in and have to buy that can of paint. And when I walk around and have a look at the cost of some of those products, I really feel for the consumer. So hopefully we were a company that only specialised in Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 markets. We didn't sell into the retail market, or did we sell into the housing market? We just simply focused in those three areas. I would like to have ventured into the retail space and given those people an opportunity to buy product, quality product at a reasonable price. Unfortunately, our business model didn't allow for that to happen. But I do feel for the retail people, the average mum and dad out there who are paying exorbitant prices for products. And I do notice that in a lot of cases, products are being dumbed down to make it easier for mums and dads to apply, but when you start to dumb products down, the quality of those products are also dumbed down.
Yes,
so the quality of product is coming down, but the prices aren't.
Yes, yeah. And it's been amazing to see, like, if you go back to that sort of brand promise for you guys to be creators and not followers, like, you really live that, and I think that's why you've been able to maintain those partnerships along the way that you have gratitude for now, but you earned that trust, you earned the credibility, and you continue to disrupt the market. And you know, it's really cool that you had a core group of people and organisations that were willing to come on that journey with you. So, final chapter now, we have already announced that Baxter is ceasing operations, which is a bit of a heartbreaker, to be honest, for me, and I think for the people within the Usher organisation, I'm sure plenty in the industry. But even though it's ceasing operation, I know it's not, you know, dead in the water. You've got existing projects out there. You've got relationships. The industry, it doesn't just turn off overnight. But what does this sort of closing chapter or next chapter look like for Bob Matthews and the Baxter brand?
Yes, Baxter ceased operations on the 30th of June. When we say ceased operating, we stopped supplying and trying to secure new projects. We still have a number of projects that are underway, and we'll continue to honour those projects, and we'll still supply. They'll still receive the service that they've become accustomed to. I'll still do the reports on the progress of how the build is coming along, how the product's being applied, making sure that it's all applied within the specifications that Baxter have put forth. For me personally, I couldn't have asked for a better end to my working life than to have spent the last 10 years developing Baxter and working with some fantastic people within the industry. It's provided me with the opportunity to give back to an industry that has served me very well for the last 35 years. And I love nothing more than receiving a phone call and on the other end that person saying, "Bob, I've got a problem, can you come and have a look at it, please?" That's my future still.
Yep. No, I think your phone's going to continue to ring, mate. We actually had to pause the podcast a few minutes ago because you took a phone call again, just, you know, the nature that you are, and, you want to help people, you want to solve problems, and it's amazing that you're still, in a position to be able to do that, and we're so grateful as well, Bob. But yeah, look, it's a heartbreaker to see Baxter go, but it definitely, it became a large beast of its own, doing 500 plus projects, and it was going to require a huge amount of investment to continue to operate at that level or grow. And as much as we're sad to see the doors close on where we are there now, it's just, I think for me, I personally am so grateful for everything I've learnt from you and being able to have you there as a support for our team. And we've got a huge team of estimators within Usher, and knowing that they've got a direct line to someone like yourself to be able to solve problems, look at things, and help us out on the front end of securing projects, it's been invaluable. And I think we're going to miss that big part of it. I think you might be getting your phone still ringing from us. But I think, is there anything, I guess, you'd want to leave behind, or some sort of closing comments about yourself or Baxter?
No, I think, as I've mentioned earlier, it's been a fantastic journey. I've made some really great relationships, and as I mentioned, there's nothing better than receiving that phone call from various builders in particular that are saying they've got a problem, can you come and have a look at it? And I think one of the things that I walk away, Michael, and we talk about integrity, is that one of the reasons that they continue to call me to have a look at their problem is they know that they're going to get an unbiased report, irrespective of who applied that product. And many times it's not even a Baxter system that's been applied to that build, but they are confident that they're going to get an honest evaluation of why that system failed.
I think you've definitely left the industry in a better place than where you found it.
Yeah, that was always Baxter's intention, was to leave the industry in a better place than we found it, and I believe we've accomplished that.
Yep. Well, Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I know the friendship and everything's going to continue, but yeah, thank you for coming and telling some of the Baxter story today. And I'm sure if anyone wants to dive into it more, there's still plenty of information that's out there about the brand and what it's been able to achieve. But I think the biggest thing is just the impact that you've left. You have disrupted the market. You have changed the systems. You've implemented things through the Baxter brand that the industry will never go back from. It's been an evolution, and we're grateful for you. Lucky to have someone with your values and integrity to be at the head of that organisation, and I think that's why it's sustained itself the way it has. So well done, Bob, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
And action.